So I'm going to welcome everyone now. And so we're so excited to have Cristina with us today, who's going to be sharing with us about her journey with Brene Browne and this Gifts of Imperfection. And we're really happy to have you here with us today and looking forward to Cristina. And I would say during this time, Cristina, anytime that you want to stop, really, this is in your hands. All I'm going to do now is just click when you want me to click forward.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Thank you for having me here. 1 month ago, I was challenged to present a book in this course that I'm doing in international coaching. And I decided to present to my classmates the book of Brene Browne, The Gifts of Imperfection, because somehow I thought it had contents that could help the practice of coaching. And then Shannon heard about it, and she invited to do the same thing here in Visionary Ad Group. And so I tried to reflect upon it and think how this could help us as educators and as teachers. So my presentation has mainly 4 points. I will first start with an introduction explaining the title of the book and why I choose this book, what is the theme of the book. I will speak a little bit about the book's author, Brene Browne, the thesis of the book, the main concepts and the book structure, and I will make some considerations about the book and its importance to the education field as an inspiration for us. So the book is entitled The Gifts of Imperfection. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. I've chosen this book because for many years, I've been saying that I am a perfectionist in recover, I was kind of addicted in perfectionism. And when I realized how it was a dictatorship for me, I decided to be more aware of it and not fight it, but sometimes embrace it and try to find ways to navigate through it that were more healthy. So Shannon, do you mind going to the next? Yeah. So why did I choose this book? I think the first time I was really confronted with my perfectionism was when I saw my youngest son, his name is Enrique, struggling with perfectionism when he was in kindergarten. So he was he was back then he was really an explorer in arts. He liked to draw a lot, but when he was drawing in his class in kindergarten 4, he would often be very frustrated with what he wouldn't think was the right drawing. And when one day I talked with his kindergarten teacher, and she told me this, it really hit me because I was seeing my son struggling with the same thing I've been struggling for years. So I chose this book because I think we should hug our imperfections, and we should leave an authentic legacy to our children. I also choose this book, and in the next slide we can see, because the first time I saw this book, it was presented to me in a group of women, international women, that were living with me in Kosovo. The person that presented this book to me was my friend Mayra. She's from Costa Rica. From your left to your right, you can see here Venera. She's from Macedonia, Fotini from Greece, me from Portugal, Mayra from Costa Rica, and Iseli from Turkey. we were all women from the world, and we were all challenged by this struggle with trying to be the best we could, trying to be the best self, and challenged to be perfect all the time. And I found that very interesting because coming from different backgrounds and different cultures, in reality, we were all struggling to embrace our imperfections. So I thought this had something to teach us. The theme of the book is the wholehearted living, a word that I had a lot of difficulty to translate to Portuguese. I do prefer the word in English. It's very hard to translate what is a wholehearted living. And Brene Browne, in this book, what she tries to do is to explain to us how we can live and create a wholehearted life. Because in her studies, she found out that people that lived a wholehearted life were way more happy. So who is, that's the next slide, who is Brene Browne? She has a PhD in social service. She's a well-known professor and researcher at Houston University, Texas. She's a world-renowned speaker. Her TED Houston 2012 had more than 40 million visioners. She has also a Netflix documentary called The Power of Courage. She entitles herself as a storyteller, a qualitative researcher, a data and stories with soul collector. I find her a great inspiration. Can you pass on, please? So I think it's important to say that our life motto is a speech that Theodore Roosevelt made in Paris, and that says this: "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of the high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." This is Brene Browne's life motto that I find really inspiring. I think it says all. We can pass to the next slide. So what is the thesis of this book? The thesis of this book is that to live a wholehearted life, we have to accept our imperfections. We need to reveal our vulnerabilities, and we courageously need to live in authenticity. So this is what is claimed. And the book, in this book, she starts defending this thesis because her whole life was collecting data from people she worked with and life stories she was able to combine. And she came to a set of concepts that either prevent you from living a wholehearted life or allow you to live a wholehearted life. So the main concepts that prevent us from living a wholehearted life, according to this book and to her, are fear, guilt, uncertainty, anxiety, scarcity, shame. And we all know that nowadays in this society that we asks of us perfection at so many levels, we try many times to disguise this concept of fear, of shame, etc. So we also know that these concepts like shame, fear, but especially shame, she was able to show with her research that it's directly correlated with addictions, with violence, depression, suicide, alimentary disturbs, bullying, etc. So we needed to know what are the concepts that allows us to live a wholehearted life. That's our next slide. So the concepts that appeared in our research that allows us this life with full meaning were belonging, joy, gratitude, compassion, courage, love, and the concept of vulnerability, like the glue of all these that appear here in this life. Her data came to the conclusion that the opposite of being vulnerable is fitting in. And what we most do in society nowadays is try to fit in. So we need compassion to ourselves first, and then to others. We need courage to appear like we really are. We are beings of belonging and connection. We need to feel grateful for the life we have and what we have in order to show our vulnerability. So I brought a kind of provocation for you to think about. What would you say that vulnerability is for you? While you are thinking about this, I would like to share with you a story that recently happened to me, and I think that tells me about vulnerability. A few months ago, one of my best friends, she's a teacher. She teaches Portuguese literature to middle school. And she came to me very worried because she made a mistake, and she only realized that mistake a few weeks later. And she made that mistake while teaching a Portuguese medieval author that she is totally in love with, and that she knows to the most intimate detail. And the error she committed was this. So this Portuguese writer, in one of his books, he has this character called the Hanged Man. And the Hanged Man is supposed to be someone that was sentenced to be hanged. But because back then my friend was really she was very tired. She was going through a very depressive period. COVID was not helping with the classes and the management of all these things, somehow she said to her classes that the hanged man committed suicide. And only a few weeks later, when she was correcting students' work, she realized that she had made this mistake. And she didn't know what to do. And now she didn't know what to do because in her mind, it was, she was always, as a teacher, she knew about this content. She knew what she wanted to say. She knew this author very well. It was impossible to make a mistake. And how could she deal with the shame of having made a mistake? So vulnerability here for me was presented through this form of I have now to confront myself and my students with this mistake. Unfortunately, my friend was not able to overcome her shame and present herself vulnerable. What is vulnerability for us? Is it the first day after our divorce? Is it to get pregnant after having an abortion? Is it to get fired? Or is it to fire someone? What is vulnerability for me? Is it to make plans with my loved one after knowing that I have cancer? Is it to tell my Christian parents that I'm gay? Or is it to be rejected? Is it to wait for the doctor to call me and say the results of my tests? What is vulnerability for us? It seems so difficult to address it. But if we don't address it, what research says is we won't be able to live a wholehearted life. So we can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Often we are confronted with myths about vulnerability. We think it's weakness. We think we can do vulnerability alone. We think we can remove uncertainty and discomfort from vulnerability, or we think that vulnerability is exposure. These are certain myths we have about vulnerability, and that Brene Browne speaks in her books, especially in this one. What we need to know is that either we do vulnerability or vulnerability will do us. This sentence, it's hers. We cannot do it by our own. We are neurologically programmed for connection, and so we need to do it with others. And it's not exposure. It can never be exposure, because we know that in today's society we live for exposure. We, like she says, we live tweet our bikini wax, but that is not vulnerability. So sharing the sordid details of our divorce is not really vulnerability. What is vulnerability? It is pure courage, showing ourselves, being seen, being honest with who you are and with others. It is having the courage to show up when we cannot, at any chance, control the outcome. And it is true that vulnerability is at the center of shame, fear, but it is also the cradle of joy, creativity, love, belonging, solutions, and ethics. So we should allow ourselves to be seen. We should love wholeheartedly. We should practice gratitude and allow joy. we should say I am enough instead of saying I am imperfect. We should be as kind and as loving to ourselves as we are with others. For sure, we will meet and we will know failure if we are vulnerable, but that is a sign of being brave, and that is really what is important. So how is, can we go to the next one? How is this Gifts of Imperfection structured? So the book basically is structured in a constellation of choices that revolve around some concepts that lead to a wholehearted life. She calls this constellations of choices guideposts for a wholehearted living. And the idea is basically upon this table where there is certain things you need to let go of and certain things you need to cultivate in order to have a more wholehearted life. So what are the 10 guideposts that she presents based on her data? First, we need to let go of what people think, and we need to cultivate authenticity. You need to, the idea is that authenticity must be a practice, conscious choice of being real, of being honest. And what she says is that being fitting in kind of leads people to exhaustion. And so authenticity also has an autonomy. You have to be brave to show yourself, to put limits, set limits to yourself, and allow yourself to be vulnerable. The second guidepost is to abandon perfectionism and cultivate self-compassion. She says that shame is the cradle of perfectionism. We want to be, we want to be seen, we want to be perceived as perfect because what perfectionism is kind of our status to others, and what we do is we want to look perfect. We want to we think that if we act perfectly, we avoid pain, we avoid guilt, we avoid judgment from others. And so we disguise shame. But in reality, what we need is to be self-compassionate and to treat ourselves like we treat others, and embrace our imperfections and see in it potential for a better life. The other guidepost is letting go of numbing and powerlessness and cultivate a resilient spirit. She was able to work with people that had to deal with trauma, and she could see that some people who lived with trauma could live, were living a wholehearted life, and resilience was the main factor around these people. So what data showed her was number one, that resilient people are people that are creative and have skills to solve problems. Number two, resilient people seek for help. Number three, resilient people have the belief that they will do something that they will do something that will help them navigate through their feelings and deal with them. 4, they have social support available. And 5, resilient people are connected with others, meaning family and friends. The other guidepost she presents is letting go of scarcity and fear of the dark, and cultivate gratitude and joy. Now, her data came out with the fact that certain concepts appeared in pairs. For instance, love and connection came together when she was making interviews to these people, or gratitude and joy came together. So what she says is that all the interviews described themselves, who described themselves as happy people, they said that actively they practice gratitude. So joy and gratitude come together, and they were described as this spiritual belief that there is first something that is superior to us. It can be God, but it can also be the universe, etc., a higher identity or energy, etc. She also find out that these people quite easily would make a difference between joy and happiness. So joy is a kind of spiritual way of practicing gratitude, and happiness is something that is that makes you feel good, but is related with external circumstances. Another guidepost that she talks about is this one: letting go the need of certainty and embracing, cultivating intuition, intuition and faith. She find out in her data that most of these people had strong connection with their inner self and with their intuition. And here we're not talking about faith in the religious sense, but in this sense of something that is like our inner voice, our serene voice, that's our natural voice that most of the times has certainty. The other guidepost is letting go of comparison and cultivating creativity. She was able to see that the researchers practice creativity without fear of being judged. She claims that when we want comparison, we are seeking for competition. And so creativity is the only way to cultivate authenticity. There is a certain disdain about creativity, but what data told was that you don't need, there is no such thing as not being creative. So everybody has creativity. The only creativity that doesn't exist is the one that is not practiced. And we can, these people thought that their contribution to the world was born with their creativity. They thought they were making some kind of meaning by doing things, simple things like cooking, painting, dancing, doing photography, knitting. They could see beauty in just creating. The other guidepost number 7 is letting go of exhaustion as a status, symbol of productivity and self-esteem, and embracing play and rest. It seems that in our adult life and in our society, it is kind of a status to say all the time, I'm very busy, I'm too busy, I have so many things to do. It kind of gives us a certain status. But what she found out was that these wholehearted people, like she says, and I'm quoting, they fool around a lot. And what it meant to fool around a lot? It meant that they played. They played with their brain. They opened their brain to imagination and to invigorate their soul. So this is another interesting data from the research. The other guidepost is letting go of anxiety as a lifestyle and cultivating calm and stillness. I think this point comes in resonance with all the latest data about the importance of meditation and the importance of cultivating stillness, not as a place of focusing in nothing, but she could see that people who lived a wholehearted life cultivated quietness as a space of creating an emotional awareness and an emotional place to think, to allow themselves to feel, to dream, to question their lives and themselves. The idea here is do less doesn't mean that you will be less. Then we have the 9th guidepost that says let go of self-doubt and supposed to, and embrace meaningful work. The idea here again is that these people were all very committed to pay their bills. Of course, we are all, but pay their bills by doing something that they felt was significant for them, that was important for them, and that meant something either for them or even for others. So cultivating a meaningful work is also important for a wholehearted life. And to end, the 10th guidepost says letting go of being cool, always in control, and cultivate more laughter, song, and dance. So I think this says all. The idea is that laughter, song, and dance promote a kind of ecstasy within yourself, but in connection with others, and it allows you to express your human emotions. So laughter, song, and dance are presented here as transformational elements. So what is the importance of
Sorry, Cristina.
It's okay.
Okay.
So the next slide says, what is my idea about this book? What analysis I do of this book? It's a very easy reading, even better listening book. I've read it and I've listened to it and I love it. It's a portrait of human behavior that leads to many, haha, I am here, or oh shit, I am also here. This is me. This is my portrait. It's a book full of real life stories, and that I really enjoyed. Some with lots of humor and relatable to our own personal experience. The author Browne leads us with examples that came out of her research, but she also shares in a very innocent way her own stories, her family stories, and she makes us empathize with her, and we feel empathic because we also see that we are not the only ones. And it is not an academic book, but it's based on scientific support, and I think that speaks by itself. So, what does this book brings to education? How could I read this book thinking about us as educators and teachers? I believe that the book allows the educators to understand the human condition, and that there are psychological aspects relevant to the process of learning. I think that this book frames the concept of vulnerability with statistical and scientific support. It recognizes the value of vulnerability and the significance of it to the educator and to the students in a real engaged process of learning. I think it allows the educators to see vulnerability as a driving force to cultivate in the classroom courage, resilience, and authenticity. I think it enhances the importance of embracing our imperfections and errors, and to see educative potential in these imperfections and errors. I also think that it recognizes the impact of empathy, joy, and gratitude. And I think that it sees intuition, creativity, play, rest, calm and stillness, significant work, music, laugh, dance as real solutions to a positive learning and positive experience in the classroom. So to end, I leave you with this inspiration from Browne. Owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experience that makes us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. And so to end, I leave you with a photo of myself with that group of women that inspire me to this book. And in that photo, you can see I have in my left hand, I have written, I am imperfect, but I am enough. And this is my path through imperfectionism and vulnerability. Thank you.
Oh, it's so beautiful. So beautiful. So I would say we have, 15 minutes if we want to share, discuss this. I thank you for a very vulnerable presentation. So, it was very personal. You shared a lot of personal stories and connected it to the frameworks that you offered. You did pose a question at the beginning where you said, what does vulnerability mean to you? And then you shared the story of your friend and the poet that she had been studying. And I'm thinking that might be something to to share with us here. So if that question was, what does vulnerability, what is it to you? And if you want to share an experience that either you worked through, or if you were in a situation where you used one of those guideposts and you felt like that really changed a situation. Yeah.
Well, for me, vulnerability is not being afraid of showing up like I am, and admitting my errors without fear of what comes next. So in the situation of my friend, that situation from my friend made me reflect a lot and think a lot, because what the only solution I saw for it was if I were her, and that could happen to me, right? Because I could also be very tired. I could also be so emotional, unstable, that I could unconsciously create a new character for an author. I would definitely come forward to my students and say the truth. So vulnerability for me is, no matter what is going to happen, after I come forward with the truth, I will say the truth, and I will say my truth. It is not easy, because society doesn't allow us to be vulnerable, I think, always. But I think that's what makes us feel more fulfilled with our lives and more in tune with who we really are.
As you're talking, one connection I make is thinking about your colleague, and I realize one of the things I miss about being in the classroom, whether it's a middle school classroom or teaching fully, is how much I enjoy playing. And I feel that I'm bringing this sense of play to like so many interactions, and it's not a sarcasm like some people have. I mean, though sometimes I guess it could be, but there's just this, that a sense of play, and I love living in that space. And I find that the people I'm closest to are the people who allow me to be in that space. You know, and so, and actually even sharing like you're sharing, it is, you know, we're being serious right now, but we're being authentic. And so it's so rich when I find people who can be that way. Years ago, when I was taking my first administrative license class, we were to give a presentation of who we were as a leader. And the superintendent took notes on what we said, and I put those notes in a drawer in my desk, and I stumbled on them like 15 years later, and I pulled out these notes, and he had written like what Shannon values as a leader is being real, and he had underlined the phrase I had used, being real.
Yeah.
And it means, it doesn't mean you have to be hard or crass or anything, but just, and yeah, so just I really connect with so many things, and thank you for sharing this. I'm wondering if anyone else wants to share, what is vulnerability to you? I guess it's, for me, it's being real and playful. And so, yeah, Robin, can you share?
Cristina, thank you so much for this. And I'm going to apologize because I have to leave in just a couple minutes for another meeting at 11 o'clock our time. But I'm going to be vulnerable in a couple weeks. Well, I'm vulnerable all the time. I'm vulnerable to my students. I'm new at the university, relatively speaking. I have more questions than I have answers. So I'm vulnerable to make sure that, because I don't want to make mistakes for my students, especially the doctoral students. It's dissertation time. I'm chairing dissertations. I don't want to miss a deadline. I don't want to not have the right paperwork turned into the right office at the right time. So I feel very vulnerable about that. And I guess the word guilt would come out is I would feel very guilty if I ever delayed my students from not graduating at the right semester just because I forgot to get paperwork done right. Next, and with your permission, I would love to use some of the information you shared today because I'm actually making a presentation at an elementary school in Tempe in a couple weeks, and it was all about play, mindfulness, and meditation because the teachers, everybody's had such a hard year this year. And so the principal has asked me to come in and talk about, what would you do just to help the climate and the culture and make people feel like the end of the year is going well? And ironically, the teacher who called me the other day is a former grad student of mine. And she said, Dr. Conrad, we had so much fun in your class. Would you mind coming and just being uplifting and sharing with our colleagues? And I said, I would love to. But the caveat to this story that really makes me vulnerable is this is the school where my grandchildren go to school. And so now I'm being seen in a different light. I'm no longer Grandma Robin. I will be Professor Robin, former principal, coming in, sharing things that I'm supposed to be very knowledgeable about. So I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling that I'm putting myself up there for vulnerability and for judgment. So anyway, I'm going to order this book today because I think it's wonderful. And you did a phenomenal job. And I think I'm breaking up here a little bit, but I have to jump off and get on another meeting. But thank you so very much.
Feel free to use the information you want, Robin. My pleasure.
I'm ordering the book today. It was
Good.
fantastic.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you, Robin.
Bye.
Bye. Good luck. Talk to you soon. Okay. So Shannon, is there anything, Everett, you would like to share? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll keep it short too, because I unfortunately have a meeting at 11 too. But Cristina, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. I was taking so many notes, trying not to look away. And yeah, it's just, I think, really important, no matter, what area you're working in. I think it's just really, even in your personal life, I think I was finding so many connections, like, oh, this would help me in this relationship. Or I was thinking about what Shannon was saying about play, and I was thinking how that might relate to even just like so many of my coworkers I haven't even yet met in person. And so I think a lot of those, we're not necessarily playing together, but just those connections that you make in the office. It's hard to be vulnerable for the first time, I think, over Zoom. And just like running into each other in the hallway. And I'm looking forward to, meeting my colleagues in person for the first time, hopefully this year, and those sorts of things. And one thing that I've thought about vulnerability, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, but I think vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And so when one person takes the initiative, I guess, to open up or be real and be honest, it enables somebody else to, have courage and share as well. So, I think that definitely can happen on Zoom and see that here, but I think it can be easier in a sense in person. So,
I agree with you. In fact, I think vulnerability is contagious. And when one person allows herself to be vulnerable in front of others, sometimes in front of an audience that you don't know that well, it creates space for others to come out. And I think what we gain is often better than what we lose. So yeah, I agree totally with you.
And as we think about groups and we think about visionary ed, one of the things that I think that we aim to be is a place where we can be authentic, we can be vulnerable. And I think that when you can be a part of a community where it's that way, so you can have it individually, but if you have a community, like even that women's group that you were with, that picture that you showed at the beginning, right? I think once we have that in a group, it's so
It's
special, and it touches us forever,
mhm,
but I think it's also something we strive for.
mhm,
And then in a classroom, we can call it culture, right? So
mhm.
when we're creating the culture in the classroom where students feel comfortable to share something that they're working with, or that's difficult, or there's a degree of tolerance and acceptance for diversity, or
Yeah.
even a joy for the diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's such a beautiful, thank you so much for sharing this with us today, Cristina. And
Welcome.
yeah, I think I think Brene will probably see this somewhere, and she will be contacting you soon. I think it's really great.
Oh.